May the Force be with you. My name is Jasom Jensai. Welcome to Star Wars Duels. This episode will be General Grievous versus General Pong Krell. Soon after beating up Pong Krell herself, Ahsoka Tano asked me to let Grievous have a chance. Naturally, I thought that was a great idea. So here we are. If you have never seen an episode of Star Wars Duels before, this is how it is going to work. I'll start by analyzing the characters' physical abilities, then I'll look at their force skills before finally going over their tactics and style. I will end with a potential scenario for their fight. The battlefield for that duel will be the palace on Toydaria. General Grievous was a Kaleesh warrior before he suffered injuries and was rebuilt as a cyborg. He then trained in lightsaber combat under Count Dooku, one of the most refined swordsmen that trained in the Jedi Order. Despite training under Dooku, Grievous' style was nothing like his master's. Dooku focused on precision and leverage. However, Grievous' cybernetic limbs made him fast, strong, and they had the ability to split, giving him 4 arms. So his body is better suited to a more chaotic approach, focused on speed and strength over precision. Grievous was incredibly fast, especially his wrists. He was so fast that the only limiting factor was his mind. In most of Grievous' duels, you can see a pair of lightsabers hanging back and doing nothing. At other times, he strikes the same spot with all 4 lightsabers. If he attacked in different spots, his opponents would have a much more difficult time fighting him. And obviously, if his 2 lightsabers hanging back were attacking, his opponents would have more difficult fighting him then. The explanation for this is that his mind simply cannot keep up, which makes sense considering he is trying to control 4 arms at once with a mind that is supposed to work with 2. Despite his speed, Jedi Masters like Kenobi and Fisto were quick enough to keep up with him in lightsaber combat. Grievous was strong enough to kick chunks of Durasteel across an entire room. He was strong enough to crack Transparasteel by throwing an Electro Staff at it. In the Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 9, he matched the strength of 3 clones at once. First they pulled him back with a grapple line, then they dogpiled on him, but he threw them off and was able to run away. Grievous was strong, but he was also extremely tough. In the Clone Wars Season 4, Episode 4, he was surrounded by Gungans. Captain Tarpal sacrificed himself to give the other Gungans an opening. The Gungans mercilessly closed in, piercing him with their spears and throwing boomas at the general. Despite the onslaught, he not only survived, but he actually remained conscious. Later in the war, Season 5, Episode 8, a fuel barrel exploded directly in front of him. Again, not only did he survive, but he was nearly unfazed. He also tanked Electrostaff strikes from Kenobi as though they were just ordinary sticks. Grievous is not quite indestructible though. Lightsabers can cut through him. In addition to the 4 arms and the physical enhancements, Grievous' cybernetics have a built-in grapple line that allows him to latch onto flat metal hulls and pull himself up. He can also turn into an insect-like creature with 6 legs. Running like this makes him faster, gives him far more grip on the ground, and makes him a harder target to hit from ground level because of the surface area. Just like how he can use his arms as legs, he can also use his legs as arms. Numerous times he has grabbed opponents with his powerful legs and either thrown them, choked them, or crushed them. Grievous is incredibly fast, he's incredibly strong, he's also extremely durability. The one thing he lacks a lot of is skill, and even that he's not terrible at. Pong Krell was a Jedi general who served during the Clone Wars. He had his introduction to us and his death during the Umbara arc of the Clone Wars. As a basilisk, Krell had 4 really strong arms. He was also incredibly agile, unlike most basilisks. His pure physical abilities were displayed masterfully here when he deignites his lightsabers. He was fast enough to dodge blaster fire, and strong enough to break the backs of fully armored clone troopers and throw them dozens of meters. Krell was also extremely skilled. He has enough precision and flow to deflect blaster bolts from 11 clone troopers who had him completely surrounded. He then kills 5 clones before retreating out a window. After falling tens of meters without injury, he ran through a force of dozens more clones and into the forest. His skills are absolutely incredible. Eventually, he was defeated when Tup lured him into Death's Embrace. The vicious plant picked him up and began waving him around. He lost coordination and was helplessly waved around for a bit until he cut off the plant's tongue when it tried to eat him. It threw him on the ground, but picked him up by the ankle before he could escape. He regained enough coordination to deflect blaster fire, but after cutting himself free, he dropped to the ground and was too dazed to react before the clones stunned him. His defeat was mostly tactical, but it also shows a lack of durability. Warriors like Obi-Wan, Anakin, and even Grievous himself would likely be completely unfazed by abruptly falling to the ground like that. But even Jedi like Kit Fisto, Quinlan Vos, and Plo Koon would have reacted much faster. It should be noted, however, that Krell is heavier than the other Jedi, so falls specifically should be harder for him. Regardless of this, Krell is an extremely skilled combatant. He has showed off his incredible speed, his incredible strength, and even skill, although not as much as his speed and strength. Both Krell and Grievous are extremely dangerous. They are both incredibly fast, incredibly skilled, and incredibly strong. However, Grievous is one of the most durable characters in Star Wars, while Krell is at best average. Grievous has the physical edge, though despite having significantly more durability, it is not a significant edge because when wielding lightsabers, toughness is much less of a factor. Grievous has no force abilities. Without force abilities, I have nothing to discuss for this section. Moving on. When confronted by Rex and the clones, Krell launched a powerful force repulse that sent all 11 troopers backward. Assuming each trooper plus all their gear is approximately 200 pounds, that is over a ton of weight between all of them. As he was fleeing, Krell launched another force push, which knocked dozens more troopers to the ground. After that, Krell did not use the force at all. Krell's use of the force comes quick and packs a lot of power. 2 force pushes is about average for a force user in a battle against non-force users. However, Krell may have simply been showing off his lightsaber skills for the most part, meaning his frequency of force uses is actually much higher than it appears. During their battle in the forest, Krell decimated the clones with his lightsabers most of the time, but at one point he deactivated his lightsabers and began beating them up with his bare hands. Why does he do this? The only explanation is that he wanted to either show off or to challenge himself. One of his personality traits is his confidence, so that would make sense. Also, both his force pushes come as he retreats into the forest. That was when he was in the most danger because the battlefield was wider and more open, which is perfect for surrounding and overwhelming a Jedi. Meanwhile, in the forest, it's a much smaller space, you can sneak around a lot more and get closer before you can get shot at, which means it favors the Jedi. With all this in mind, it seems clear to me that after escaping into the forest, he stopped using the force due to overconfidence, not because he doesn't like to use the force or doesn't use it as much. If you look only at his frequency for his retreat only, it is actually pretty high. That said, however, if he feels he can take Grievous in a lightsaber duel, he might not use the force just to challenge himself. Pong Krell obviously has the advantage of force abilities. However, Grievous has a few ways to limit that advantage. The first is simply his durability. A basic force push would merely knock Grievous back. It can disarm him, but it won't kill him. This would be effective against Krell as well, though it does not solve the problem. The second way Grievous deals with the force is through distraction. Grievous would try to intimidate his opponent, and then he would overwhelm them with speed and ferocity. It was difficult for Jedi to use telekinesis while trying to fend off 4 lightsabers at once, for obvious reasons. This strategy, however, may backfire when fighting Krell. As discussed earlier, Krell may refrain from using the force if he believes he can defeat Grievous without it. But if Grievous does his best to intimidate and overwhelm Krell, Krell is actually more likely to fall back in the force rather than less. One last point against Grievous is that Krell's force pushes are generally very quick, meaning that even when put under high pressure by Grievous, Krell can launch a force push. Krell has a pretty significant edge due to his force abilities. Krell can throw off an attack, he can set up his own attack, or even potentially disarm Grievous, but he won't be able to end the fight with a force push. I've already covered some of Grievous' tactics because much of it is focused on covering his lack of force defenses. He's intimidating, overwhelming, very aggressive. But now I'm going to cover some stuff I didn't mention. So against most Jedi, he would begin with 2 lightsabers, though if his opponent knew him well, he would start with all 4. I believe he would start with 2 to preserve the element of surprise of unleashing forearms. This would explain why he simply starts with 4 against opponents who have dueled them before like Kenobi and Ventress. They wouldn't be surprised, so there's no point in holding back the surprise. We see this strategy work brilliantly against Nadar Veb. He gets in the bind and draws a blaster with his third hand and shoots Nadar Veb in the stomach like 3 or 4 times. The backbone of Grievous' strategy is overwhelming his opponents, but another big part of Grievous' strategy is knowing when to retreat. Grievous knows when he is outmatched, and if he is outmatched, he'll retreat. In most cases, he actually called on reinforcements, typically Magna Guards, but in 1v1 duels, he would go straight to a retreat because there's no reinforcements to help him. Grievous appears to use a mix of Form 5 and Form 1 while wielding only 2 lightsabers. When wielding all 4, he seems to emphasize the Form 1 much more. Form 1 is known for its wide flowing strikes and its intuitive and natural nature. Form 1 would be perfect for keeping track of all 4 lightsabers at once. Grievous simply keeps his lightsaber moving and continually slashes at his opponent, overwhelming him. He also incorporates lots of kicks into his combat. Though this could point to Form 4, I don't think he uses every aspect of Form 4, so I wouldn't consider him a Form 4 practitioner. Although I could see him being a practitioner of Form 6. Let me know what you think his lightsaber forms are in the comments, and that goes for Krell too, because his form is a little bit unique as well. I think Krell uses a blend of Form 1, Form 3, and Form 6. He basically forms a cocoon of twirling lightsabers to protect himself. However, that is only against blaster-wielding foes. His fighting style would be slightly different when going up against melee opponents, though still the same styles. For one thing, he would put more force behind his strikes and parries. This would slow him down and keep him from twirling quite as much. He may even use his lightsabers two-handed to give him a significant strength advantage compared to one-handed. I suspect he alternates between one-handed grips for speed and two-handed grips for defense, though there's no evidence for this, it's pure conjecture. We don't know much about his dueling tactics, but based on his battle with the 501st and his weapons, he probably tries to intimidate his opponents and overwhelm them with the unorthodox. He is overconfident, so he would probably try to end the fight quickly. They both have pretty similar tactics. They would try to overwhelm and surprise the other with their chaotic and unorthodox styles. Tactically, confidence is the difference. Grievous is humble enough to retreat when he is outmatched, and wise enough as well. But Krell has too much pride for that. Both have a chaotic blend of Form 1, possibly Form 6, and a different form. Krell uses Form 3, giving him a solid defense to fall back on, while Grievous uses Form 5, allowing him to take charge of the battle through offense. Grievous gets the edge tactically. While confidence is good, Krell has too much of it. If he is put in a tough spot by Krell's force advantage or dueling ability, Grievous's caution would save his life. But if Krell finds himself in trouble, he would simply try harder and end up losing in the long run. The Toydarian throne room has a short hallway leading into a room of medium width, but it has a high ceiling. A trio of anti-gravity platforms designed to bring people up to the same height as the king and his council in order to address them would allow warriors to make use of the vertical space. While they are quite durable, the platforms can be disabled by a deep lightsaber stab. As a Jedi, Krell was able to jump far higher than most people. This would allow him to utilize the vertical space much better than Grievous. Grievous's jump is impressive, but it's nothing next to a Jedi's. However, in a battlefield such as the throne room, the chances of falling are higher, and Krell has been seen to not take unforeseen falls very well. He can drop from great heights if he expects it, but if he accidentally falls or is knocked down, he will be in big trouble. On the other hand, I'm not sure Grievous would even be fazed by a fall from the very top of the room. Krell has the terrain advantage, though it is a smaller advantage due to his durability. Make sure to like the video and leave a comment, and with all that, let's begin the duel. Grievous strode confidently through the hallway. He looked up to see Pong Krell standing in the front of the throne room on the balcony. He smoothly rose into the air on the anti-gravity platform. They locked eyes. A slow smile spread across Krell's face. Grievous slowly crouched and reached for a pair of trophies, ready to strike. But in a flash, Krell's hands shot out and flung Grievous into the wall with the force. He slammed hard into the wall and dropped to the ground, landing on his feet. Krell jumped down on top of him. Grievous, lightsabers ignited and swirling. Grievous ignited two of his own lightsabers just in time. Krell pushed Grievous backward. His lightsaber spun around and around, twisting to strike Grievous at new angles, but continually pressuring him back through the hallway. Grievous kept trying to take the offensive, but every time he struck, Krell would deflect his attack to the side with a twist and counter with a quick series of attacks. Finally, Grievous saw an opening. Krell had overextended, and in the fraction of a second between then and Krell's next attack, Grievous' leg shot forward, slamming the Jedi back as hard as any force push. Krell slid backward on the ground. He dropped both his lightsabers. Grievous strode forward as he split his arms and ignited a second pair of sabers. He usually liked to surprise his opponents, but sometimes intimidation worked even better. Grievous began twirling his lightsabers menacingly and approaching Krell. Suddenly, Krell rolled backward and onto his feet. The anti-gravity platform rose a few feet in front of Krell before it zoomed towards Grievous. Grievous tried to avoid it, but the platform clipped aside, sending him reeling. He fell to the ground. The world spun for a second. As he regained his balance, he realized he had dropped 3 of his sabers. Suddenly, Krell was on him, knocking his last saber out of his hand. Krell pinned him to the ground by the wrists. Krell's strength shocked him, but he had left Grievous' leg free. Grievous kneed Krell in the stomach. The Jedi gasped in pain. Grievous got an arm free as Krell trapped his legs at the zone. He grabbed Krell's face and tried to throw him off, but the Jedi only roared in pain. Suddenly, a lightsaber flew to Krell's free hand. Grievous let go of Krell's face and grabbed the arm holding the lightsaber desperately. A fiery green beam of energy burst from the blade, stabbing the floor inches from Grievous' head. He let go of Krell's other arm and collapsed one set of arms together to hold Krell's hand more securely. Krell immediately began using his free hand to begin pummeling Grievous' chest and stomach. But it was no use. Grievous was too tough. Grievous managed to get one of his legs free and wrapped it around the back of Krell's leg. He pulled him just off of center, just enough to push off with his other leg. He flipped over, landing on top of Krell. Now he had the advantage. Krell immediately unleashed a force push that knocked Grievous into the ceiling. Grievous slammed into the ceiling and began to fall back down. Krell force-pulled his lightsabers, ready to chop Grievous to pieces as he landed. But Grievous launched his grapple line and pulled himself back to the ceiling. Krell laughed as Grievous hung from the ceiling, seemingly helpless. The foolish Jedi leapt in the air to chase Grievous, but Grievous threw himself sideways, half scuttling, half falling down the side of the wall. Grievous landed on all 6 limbs and began crawling away. Krell landed just behind him, laughing and chasing after. Grievous picked up a lightsaber as he crawled through the hallway and out the door. Grievous heard Krell laughing confidently as Grievous stepped to the side and prepared an ambush. Krell burst through the doors. Grievous attacked. The Jedi blocked, but Grievous grabbed Krell's chest with a leg and drove him to the ground. Krell spun his lightsaber, slicing off Grievous's leg, but Grievous knocked his lightsabers out of his hands with a quick pair of strikes. Before Krell could get away, Grievous grabbed his ankle, pulled the Jedi toward himself, and stabbed Krell through the chest. Krell had the Force, but as soon as he started winning, his overconfidence got the best of him. A more noble fighter than Grievous would have lost, but Grievous's willingness to retreat allowed him to take the victory. Of course, if it wasn't for his physical abilities, especially his toughness, he wouldn't have survived long enough to take advantage of Krell's arrogance. I think Grievous would defeat Krell 65% of the time. What do you think? Thanks for watching, and of course, thank you to Ahsoka Tano for the suggestion. I had thought of this one, but I thought their fighting styles were too similar to be interesting. However, this was a really fun one to write. If you liked this video, make sure to like the video and check out my Ahsoka vs. Krell video or my Grievous vs. Maul video. May the Force be with you. Krell pinned him to the ground by the wrists. The basilisk's strength shocked him. 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 That is surprisingly hard to say. Anyways, the basilisk's strength shocked him, but he had left Grievous's legs free. I'm just gonna say it. Krell's strength shocked him, but he had left Grievous's leg free. Grievous kneed Krell in the stomach. The Jedi gasped.